Good morning. How are you guys doing? Good? 2 days, action-packed. Server. Munch, learn, talk about .NET Server. What I'm going to do is, the purpose of this discussion is kick it off, and it is a little mushy strategy, but I want you to get a framework for how we think about the server relative to Microsoft's business. I want you to understand how our business is going, and then how we think about Windows 2000 to .NET Server to, frankly, what happens after .NET Server. And then the last piece of this discussion is I do want to spend some time talking about you and talking about the competition. So, with that, let's jump into the business. We're in an economic downturn. You guys all know that. But our business is looking very, very strong. If you look at there are a number of ways you can measure us and think about us as a partner. But the most important number you probably care about is share in sockets, because you're watching the more servers we ship, the more share we gain, the more volume, the more business opportunity that offers for you. The market dropped in the first half in server shipments somewhere, depending on what numbers you believe, somewhere in the 2 to 6% range. We think it's more in the 5 to 6% range. Counter to that, we grew, depending on which numbers you believe, anywhere between 6 and 10% on a shipment basis. So in a down market, our shipments advance. That means we're taking share. That means customers are continuing to spend heavily on our technology base. You look at that, that's just straight units. Now let's talk about revenue. In that down market, our revenue outpaced license growth by an additional 7 percentage points. So we're taking share, our revenue is growing strongly, which is really, I look at that as an indicator. Customers are willing to pay us money in a down market. They think that these investments that they make around server are critical. The other thing that I think is very significant in the marketplace is I've had many customers and partners come up to me in the last 12 months or so, actually me or the company. In the late 90s, what Microsoft stood for and where we were going was a lot less clear, frankly. We had sort of completed the Win32 and the client server focus. We had to deliver on the promise of reliability with Windows 2000, but where were we going beyond that? And I think when I look at what we've done with .NET, the clarity of vision and the execution path, at least internally, is very, very clear in terms of what we need to do, and that's a technology investment statement as well as a partnership and ecosystem investment statement. We know where we need to go. We have a clear vision of where we're going, what investments we need to make, and what partnerships we need to build with you. And I think that's super important as you bet on us and you think about us as a partner that drives and grows your business. Pipeline and execution path, that simply means when I talk to our engineering teams and when I look at the things that we need to do over the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, there's a very clear set of efforts and opportunities that we see on the architectural front and on the engineering front in particular, because that's really the topic of this conversation. So I feel good about the business. I feel really good about the business relative in a competitive context and in a market context, and I feel good about where we're going. This slide is sort of how I think about, I do spend a lot of time thinking about how the web and connectivity is changing the server marketplace in general and the opportunities it affords us. The web, and we'll talk about this slide in the context of a web paradigm, but version 1 of the web was incredibly static. It was really fundamentally a presentation layer, and in general, the load and the functions that the server was taxed on the basis of was just as a presentation layer. You move into this unidirectional model where it's transact and share, and this is true not only in a web landscape but generally. a simple credit card transaction. Here's a file that I'm going to put on a server that I'm going to share with you. The big challenge and the opportunity is around, we use this sort of blanket term, web services, and collaboration, but think of it as a bidirectional dialogue. So it puts a lot more stress, challenge, and demand for flexibility on the server. I'll give you a simple example. Today we authenticate and certify really at a user level. So that says I have a set of privileges that I'm granted as a user or that a machine is granted. But there's no reason why, actually there's plenty of reasons why it doesn't happen today, but what users want to be able to do is do that at a blob or a document basis so that the privileges are granted for every document. The author defines what user has which privileges, and it's on the document basis as opposed to the user or machine basis. So that collaboration and that bidirectional dialogue is a statement for the web, but also in the client, server, and services infrastructure that we need to build. Now, this slide is a slide you've probably heard and looked at in many different contexts, but you see the costs of hardware, the cost of software, and the cost of connectivity continuing to drive down, but the operational costs are fundamentally the challenge that we all face. The operational costs of deployment, of management, of securing the solution, what it takes to develop and deploy business value in the applications that you develop for your customers or partners, or that your customers or partners develop themselves. How does that application integrate into the infrastructure and the investment that has already happened? When we think about what Microsoft is all about, and the things that, when you've heard .NET used a bunch probably, and there are many different interpretations of that view, I look at it and I say we are about building an end-to-end platform that goes from device, be that a PC, a smartphone, a game console, but from device to server to cloud. All three elements of that are fundamental. So when we think about the investments that we make on the client side, it's about how does it participate richly and deeply with the server and with a service in the cloud. What are the underlying web services that are fundamental, whether it be authentication, identification, or specific personalized services? The question we often get there is, does that mean that Microsoft is going to try and run and drive all of those services? The answer is no. We will provide a set of services and monetize against that, but at the same time provide a federated model so that any company can say, no, I don't want Microsoft to run that service. That's a service that I want to run. Classic example of this would be identification. So, sure, we'd love to have companies use Passport, but at the same time, the ability for Passport to relate deeply to the directory and your own identification service that you or a company drives, that's something that we will enable. So there's clients, there's web services, and then there's the underlying servers. The underlying servers are everything from Windows.NET Server, and we'll talk about that obviously in deep detail over the next couple days, but also SQL, Exchange, Host Integration Server, BizTalk, etc. So that end-to-end portfolio of products and technologies, frankly, is how we think we can drive a set of experiences and solutions that transcend the device and transcend the server into the cloud. Now, there is a particularly important piece of the puzzle over here, which is Visual Studio. Visual Studio, I look at it and I really think of it as the glue that enables it all to happen. The glue in the sense that at the end of the day, it's the applications and services that are written to be deployed on the server, to be run on a client, and to be enabled from the cloud. Visual Studio is the glue that enables that. And I'll talk about the relationship between Visual Studio and the Windows Server in a second. But it is interesting. Some of you may obviously have watched us over the last 18 months, but we were in an exec retreat a couple weeks ago, and looking at what we were doing over the last over the last 12 months and the next 6 to 8 months, we will refresh every single major product in the company, from Office to Windows XP to Windows Server to Visual Studio to introducing a major new product line from Microsoft with Xbox. So this is the most significant product release effort that we've ever done as a company in an 18-month period of time. And as we drive on this vision of .NET, the 1-2 punch, communicating the vision and the opportunity, enabling application developers to drive a next generation of applications and web services with Visual Studio, and then deliver .NET Server on the promise of how to run and deploy those applications. Which leads me to what we are all about as a product group and what we're trying to enable you to do. We look at Windows Server as sort of the core plumbing. It is the foundation for connecting people, technologies, and businesses. It's a foundation. Ideally, I think of it as like, when I talk to development team, I think it's like electricity. It's there, and it's an enabler. You all deliver the solution. It's a foundation that enables your unique vision and the value add that you provide for your customers and for your partners. You take the underlying building blocks and the enabling capabilities of the server and the foundations that it provides to connect people, technologies, and businesses. So the challenge that we have to enable you is providing a platform that really, and this is the long-term direction of vision, but that really enables effortlessly deploying, or developing, deploying, and operating applications and services that scale effectively and federate very, very well. So that's the premise and the challenge before us. We provide those that underlying plumbing and building blocks, and then you, based on your unique knowledge of the marketplace and the customers that you service, drive those building blocks into a set of value add and Uber solutions. I wanted to spend, as I have talked to some of you, it's clear to me that we need to communicate and have a consistent taxonomy with which we talk about our customers and how we drive it. And this is how I think about the core customers that we will sell to, how we orient and think about our sales force, how we focus our development organizations and our marketing organizations. Some of this is motherhood and apple pie. We're all very familiar with the IT professional. And the IT professional is all about operational excellence. Operational excellence means the system stays up, it's secure, it scales, that every single day, how do I wring an additional 10% cost out of my operation? And as I'm doing that, how do I then invest in next generation capabilities, which leads down into the knowledge worker, business decision maker at the bottom. Because the knowledge worker, what we call knowledge worker BDM, or business decision maker, he's all about how am I going to create software solutions that enable more business value. The operation guy is going to wring an additional 10% cost. I'm looking for differentiation in the marketplace based on unique business value. The developer, the guy that is, or the woman or the man that is developing the integratable applications. They're looking about how do I write less code in a higher performance fashion, do more with less, and do that in a way that is secure, that is reliable, and that is easily deployable. So those are sort of, when I think about the audiences that we fundamentally target and develop for, sell and market to, those are the core for us. Now the other side of it is, when I talk to people, I think about it, there's a managed environment. People get, tell me about how you think about large enterprises or medium-sized companies or small organizations. I really think that there's a dividing line which says, look, there's managed environments and there's unmanaged environments. The managed environments, in essence, either through the services of you or through internal staff, are very centralized and very directed in how they manage that environment. There are many small and medium-sized businesses that are fundamentally unmanaged. When they want to add storage, they go out and they just buy a server. And they don't have a long-term vision and architecture for how they're going to deploy, how they're going to drive and build out their IT infrastructure. So as you think about and develop your solutions, and I think it's a challenge for us as well, is making sure that we have a clear thinking, how are we enabling the unmanaged environment where there is not a lot of full-time IT professional people, driving significant simplicity into our products, into your products and solutions so that they're more deployable, more easily manageable, where you don't have the sophistication and the technology excellence that's represented in this room or represented in many IT shops of Fortune 2000 companies. This is how, on the basis of those audiences, I am pushing the product development organizations to think much harder about clear roles and identities for Windows Server. If you look at, and you'll get a sense of this over the next couple days, but the surface area of the technologies that exist within Windows.NET Server is truly immense. There is no platform on the planet that represents that mass of functionality. Now, that's both a blessing or it can be a curse depending on how it's developed, deployed, communicated, and enabled. So we talk about the IT professional getting very focused on what it means to develop this operation and deliver on this operational excellence, getting very focused on enabling IT infrastructure. The bets that we're making as a company on the basis of that is that it is about scale out. So doing that in a distributed fashion. Not a surprise to all of you, but Microsoft's strategy is about PC economics. It's about scale out multiple boxes. That bet continues. Even as we push up in the reliability, even as we do more and more scale-up work, the fundamental bet is scale out. That means scale out both in a data center, but it also means across in a very geographically dispersed fashion. So, distributed and federated. Federated means that you have trust relationships within the organizations that you support and service, but federated in the context of businesses to businesses and businesses to consumers. Manageable. In order to have a distributed federated model, you've got to provide a lot of underlying semantics for management, and that is a core challenge and bet for us. Now, I've got on the right-hand side of this a rather eclectic list of technologies in which I do this presentation and have this. You can put a huge list of things that fall into the IT infrastructure bucket, huge list. But I wanted to highlight the fact that the directory we think is a core anchoring point. We think that the network infrastructure, things like VPN, RAS, the wireless support that we're doing in Windows.NET Server, those are key anchors to enable the IT infrastructure. So directory, networking, the networking pieces, and then the management infrastructure. This is an area, frankly, where I think we've got to push the envelope a lot harder. If you look at if you had a pie chart of my R&D investment, that is the most significant area from a people headcount perspective, and we recognize it's an area we need to push harder and faster if we're going to pull off the distributed and federated model. And the developer, if you, and sort of taking a step back, if you look at Microsoft as a company and how we've evolved, the developer is the heart and soul of who we are and who we support and service. And frankly, I think we lost our way a little bit in terms of servicing and supporting the developer in the outbound marketplace. We have been very, very quiet for really from 96 to about 2000 in terms of how we were reinventing the development model for people. How do I write an application? What does it mean to write an application? What is an application, and how does it relate to the desktop, to the server, and what I call the cloud? This year, between Visual Studio and Windows.NET Server, we will reinvent what it means to write an application. We will blur the line between an application and a web server. And the anchoring point for that, and for you and I in this room, is the application server. And I mean application server in a broader context. It's not just writing a line of business application. It's about what is the difference between an application server that's line of business and a web server. I personally think that those lines will blur and blend. So that means huge bet on web services. Huge bet on that there's a development model that goes from cloud to server to device, and that those have to relate in a rich fashion. Huge bet, integration is a little weird, but there's lots of things stuck under that word, and I'll talk about it in a little more detail. But integration means we're going to be language agnostic. We do think that there is a next generation language necessary, which is C#, but don't be confused. We're going to be very language agnostic. That managed code is the model. So our strategy and our communication is about managed code as the direction with the Common Language Runtime, or the CLR. We make a huge bet on the fact that the IDE and the CLR with a new language is the opportunity, and then driving it into a server that enables scale out, that has the process isolation of IIS6, et cetera, et cetera. So the bets are around web services and XML. XML, I'm sure you all are very familiar with, and I'm sure you've heard our huge bet there. But XML and the underlying XML schema is how we think it stitches together. Question that people often ask is, well, is this a huge Microsoft-only bet? No. We believe that XML and those underlying schema is how you were going to drive integration and interoperability. So that means, as you watch our dialogues with partners like IBM on what are the underlying interoperability necessary for integration of XML schema. You've probably seen some of the ECMA announcements of late. The integration and the interoperability, we believe, will happen at the schema level. Yeah, we're going to compete like crazy relative to WebSphere and relative to J2E, relative to WebLogic, because we think that it is about language agnostic, and we think that the relationship between the web server, the application server, and the underlying operating system are fundamental to deliver an end-to-end solution. That does not imply that we think that integration and interoperability is not important. It absolutely is important, but it happens at the schema level. Okay. So that means the framework's super important. That means SOAP, COM+, IIS, UDDI, the discovery protocol, ASP.NET are all anchoring technologies for us. Now, on the knowledge worker side, the real focus for us, and this goes beyond the server, but the real focus for us over the next couple of years is around collaboration and communication. And the anchoring, and I think we take a fairly, this is not a marketing term, but fairly incremental step in Windows.NET Server. There are a couple very cool things around real-time collaboration with RTC and the SIP stack. There's some very exciting work we're doing with SharePoint relative to our file server. But you should, as you think about the bets that we're making, we think that there's a huge opportunity between the server, Office, and Windows Desktop to redefine what it means to communicate and collaborate. Some of that is driven by us. Some of that is driven by the fact that the cost of connectivity, I actually think that one of the most exciting things for all of us is the advancement of 802.11, certainly at least at a minimum here in North America. Cost of connectivity is declining, but the applications and the software infrastructure around that hasn't kept pace. There's a lot of work that we've done in Windows.NET, and a lot more work I think we can do in the application level to better support and better enable communication and collaboration. So as you watch us as a development organization, as a marketing and a sales organization, the most important thing out of this slide is here's how we think about the roles that we will drive, and here's the core bets. Some of these are probably pretty familiar to you, motherhood and apple pie, but I do get questions frequently, which is, how does Microsoft think about scale up versus scale out? We think we have to scale up to a certain degree to scale out, but don't be confused. It's about a distributed compute model that's highly federated. That is our long-term strategy and direction. That's why it is very fundamental that we do a better job in the core building blocks around management, as an example. Okay. Let me do this. Let me go through, and then I'll get through, and then we'll do questions at the end. I should be able to move pretty quickly through the deck, and then we'll do about hopefully 10 or 15 minutes of questions at the end. I wanted to give you a sense. We're gonna do a deep dive, and you've got a great set of folks from my team coming in over the next couple days. I wanted to give you a sense of how we think about and are going to position the product in the marketplace. So this is, I'll admit, this is a little bit of marketing gobbledygook, but think of this as the framework with which we communicate and anchor the product by audience. So to the IT professional, it is, at the top level, it's the most comprehensive integrated infrastructure for you to run your IT operation. Most comprehensive, end-to-end, one-stop shop. Now, the question that people often ask is, well, that's, great. Tell me how to think about that in the context of Windows 2000. I mean, I'm just getting through, I'm going through my Windows 2000 deployment. Don't try and jam another release on me. I mean, geez. For the IT professional, Windows.net is a refinement. It's polishing. It is not a revolutionary rewrite. So there are a bunch of great things that you're gonna hear. There's a bunch of great things that we've done to make AD migration easier. There's a bunch of great things that we've done around group policies, and we'll talk about all this stuff in a second. But the high-level framework is all the things that you loved with Windows 2000 got better, but no, this is not a revolution. This is Windows 2000, from at least from our perspective, was really the IT professional revolution for us. Okay, that was where big step in reliability. You saw us focus a lot on what I call core infrastructure pieces, like the directory, like the networking stuff. This, when you think about it, is polishing some of the things that really bugged you about Windows 2000. You said, God, this is such a great product, but there's the 3 or 4 things that I'm really grappling with in the deployment, etc. That's how I think about this release. It means incremental, not revolutionary. As you sit in this room, probably the question's going on, which is, oh man, do I stop my Windows 2000 rollout and wait for all the great stuff you're going to see? No, the ambition, the direction, and the investment to the development team is polish those rough edges, but don't try and create this quantum revolutionary leap. That's the high-level Uber. And so to the IT pro, it is about continuing on the trajectory around scalability and reliability. Security, big question that people ask about us. Continuing on the trajectory there, though frankly, that one is one that we need to accelerate based on customer expectations, based on the fact that if we're the fundamental foundation, the electricity that connects people, businesses, and technology, they got to have confidence that it's secure. We've all had customers or partners that have been impacted in a dramatic fashion by Code Red, NIMDA. And I look at that, and the first question I ask is, so do we have inherently more security intrusions than any other platform? The answer is no. And we can, Peter, if you just tell me the website that in terms of that study that we use to track, I'd love to use that in the Q&A. But that isn't the point. It's not about the number of intrusions. This year we will blow past the 50% of server run rate, which is a key milestone that we track. So well over 50% of the market servers ship our Windows servers this year. And that means that customers have a much higher expectation. So we need a process with which people can know that there's the latest. They understand where to get the patches or the security fixes. They need to know that we have done everything in our power to eliminate them as we release the product. They need to know that there's a very easy mechanism for getting them, deploying them out to their enterprise, and then how to test and validate relative to things like application compatibility, etc. Some of you may have seen Bill's memo on trustworthy computing. From a Windows development organization, we are stopping all development for the month of February. Every single person in my development organization is spending at least a day doing security training, including my assistant. Every single person. Because the only way that I can look, and I actually think that long term, hopefully midterm, not long term, but this becomes a competitive advantage for us in terms of how we architect, how we engineer, and how we service our customers on security. But this means an impact to the schedule, frankly, and I'll talk about where we are in that. But it means we're taking this very, very, very seriously, and we think that this is an opportunity for us to deliver a higher value to customers relative to what the market is. Now, some people say, well, look, I mean, geez, you know, viruses are viruses. They attack the greatest population mass. You know, one of two things happens. Either the population mass gets distributed or a resiliency builds up. We're hell-bent on that resiliency. And that means things like a federated Windows update, so that there's basically, think of it as a holding area or a cache in your location or in customers' locations, so that you can get the updates automatically. That means good documentation on them. It means you know how we tested it. It means that you have to have confidence that every single developer in our organization has, to the best of their ability, signed off on the code and the binaries that they're responsible for, so that they, to me, it's very simple. I want accountability in the engineering organization around things, I mean, stupid things like buffer overruns. I want to know at the individual developer, at the individual test level, et cetera. That's a commitment I have to make. And then those are process statements. And then apply the engineering IQ that you expect of us to make sure that we have great architectures and great models to secure your customers and your infrastructure. Now, where was I going with all this? This all comes back to dependable. Continuing on the trajectory of reliable, scalable, secure. Productivity. This one is things like, wow, you know, I'm excited about directory, but how, you know, there's the 3 or 4 things that are really bugging me. It's hard to roll out. Improving migration tools. The one that I'm personally most excited about is group policy was a pretty rich tool, or a pretty rich opportunity, but the tool was very rough. And I'm doing these end-to-end scenario reviews with the development team. And it is very exciting to see these guys really think through, and they had customer example after customer example in terms of here's the problems we're solving and here's the tool as it stands. But it is about smoothing out those productivity tools that IT professionals depend on. And then connected. Connected means wireless. I think wireless is a big one. I think VPN is a big one. RAS, you know, I think people understand that's just that continuing to polish. Integration between Passport and Active Directory, so the Passport can validate against a Windows domain. And then the area that this is as much a business model statement as it is anything else, but doing a better job in the extranet case. You know, some of you may be familiar with our internet connector as an example. Like really internalizing that this is a business-to-business model. It's not just an IT shop managing within a single company. So there's a bunch of things that we've done on that space. So that's how we think about when I talk to an IT professional, I say continuing on the trajectory of Windows 2000, not a revolution, but a significant refinement. All right, the developer. This is a revolution. Now, I don't think that Windows.NET Server, I think Windows.NET Server is part of the revolution. When you think about our strategy and our investment, you think about it in the context of Windows.NET Server and Visual Studio. Think of it in the context of CLR and ASP.NET, IIS 6 and C#. But it is about providing a much more dependable platform for writing and developing and delivering applications. and I think that means that things go through the runtime engine. That means that I can have a single web server and multiple instantiation, very good process isolation within IIS 6, so that I can, if you've got one instantiation that's running a crappy ASP or ASP.NET page, you could bring that instantiation goes down, no problem on the other instantiations. The most extreme example of this, we have a couple hosters that are using the beta and looking at it, and they've got a single web server, and they've got a bunch of different customers on that web server. You should have absolute isolation. So one customer site goes down, the others stay up. That to me is the benchmark and the criteria for us. More dependable. Improves productivity. This is all about how do we let developers do more with less code. And that's a statement about the advancements that we think exist within Visual Studio, and then the advancements that C# represents. Connected, you've already heard me talk about this, but connected is about the interoperability between the client device, between the server, between the cloud. It also means connected across different XML schemas and different data sources. One question, I was in New Jersey a couple days ago talking to some customers, and they're, boy, I'm really excited about what you're doing with .NET, but I've already, I really can't move my underlying database and my data sources. No, interoperability has to be a core asset or a core part of the value proposition. So, as an example, there are plenty of ways in VS and in that model to go against a wide variety of data sources. So, .NET Server, Visual Studio, it's a revolution. It's a complete new way of thinking about how to develop applications and services and run them on the server. All right, Knowledge Worker. Picking up where we left off with Windows 2000 and continuing to deliver the best server for Knowledge Worker productivity and collaboration. This one, again, if you push me hard, I would characterize it as an incremental improvement, not a revolutionary improvement. But more dependable. All the security discussions we just had, all the reliability discussions we just had, that, of course, applies to your knowledge worker infrastructure. There are a couple things that, as you go through the day or the agenda in the next couple days, a couple things to watch. I actually think that the work we're doing around real-time communication, collaboration, RTC, and SIP, watch that. I actually think that is a significant investment area for us, and it is something that I think we're still figuring out how loud to make that marketing message, frankly. But I'm a big believer in the fact that the big anchor for Windows.NET Server will be RTC, shadow copy, and STS. Those would be the three sort of features that I think represent significant improvements. RTC, communication, and then shadow copy, and STS, SharePoint Team Services, is really helping people improve on the collaboration model and improve on just having access to their data. So that's how I think about the server relative to those audiences. Of course, that sets me up for what's the roadmap, gang? How do we think about it? And I start again anchoring against those audiences. Windows 2000 was really our revolution for IT professional, where we came in and we said, we're data center ready, we're ready to run the core infrastructure for your IT shop. Windows.NET is refining that, and I think Longhorn will continue to refine that. Windows.NET is about the developer. It's revolutionizing the application platform and continuing to build enterprise credibility. When I say refinement, I'm watching people's, it's sort of that early morning thing. It means continuing on the trajectory, which you demand and you expect for us, scalability, reliability, security, manageability. But it is not about re-revolutionizing, saying, hey, you know, we did Active Directory, now let me tell you about the new thing. No. Refining that. Longhorn server, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but I want to make sure you invest in us as a partner, predicated in the fact that we can continue to execute well for you as a technology supplier, if nothing more, as a building block enabler. So yes, we have a very clear vision in terms of where we need to go around Longhorn. I think that, you know, again, in my server taxonomy and theme, it really is there. It's revolutionizing the knowledge worker experience. And that's a statement that goes beyond the server. Obviously, that's the server. That's things like Office and things like Windows Desktop. But I think there's a huge set of opportunities that are starting to, you know, the stars are starting to align in terms of how connectivity is being enabled. The fact that instant messaging is now starting to be a paradigm that corporations are thinking about, and that people are very fixated on this. Fixated is an overstatement, but people are starting to think about, okay, if there are a bunch of web services in the cloud, how do I federate those for me as a consumer, me as a business, relating to other consumers or other businesses? So that's the roadmap. The next question that I know everyone wants to know is, I came all the way here because I want to know when .NET Server is going to ship. So we will have a betting pool at the end of the sessions. Everyone puts the card in. No, I'm just kidding. Here's where we are on the schedule. Actually, how many of you have Beta 3? Good. Okay. Give me actually, I don't know what's the right way of doing this. Give me on a scale, give me a sense of where you thought Beta 3 was from reliability, robustness, and functionality perspective, where A says very, very close, B says good, C says, I'm still pretty nervous, and D says, man, you got a lot of work between now and RTM. How many people would give us an A? Okay? Now, okay, I saw one back there. Are you a Microsoft employee? No, I'm just kidding. Nice plant. How many would give us a B? Okay. How many would give us a C? How many would give us a D? Okay. Okay, that's what that is where. So just so you that are in the front row, most people raise their hand around B. I think that was where we think as well. Though right now our stress runs on our long-term stress runs, we're ahead of Windows 2000 RTM. Things like, I was just looking at ITG is doing a deployment of Windows .NET Server on our SAP implementation, and it's running 75% faster today. And I don't think we're done with our performance tuning. A lot of it is because of the COM+, some of the COM+ work that we've done. But we have some hard work to go, and I actually thought we had this schedule all figured out. And I was, you know, when we were setting this up many months ago, I was like, oh boy, let me tell you about the end of the summer. This security thing, we are taking super seriously. The month of February is a full, you know, we call it a stand down, but we're taking every engineer, every program manager, every tester, every documentation person, and making sure that we can look you in the eye and your customers in the eye and say, we have the most secure platform on the planet. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be security intrusions. There will be. We're not going to pull Larry Ellison on you. But I want to make sure that we've done everything we can possibly do from a process and an engineering perspective to make sure that statement's true. Those statements, you know, and you hear me talking about it relative to .NET Server because that's really, you know, you came here to hear about .NET Server, not Windows 2000. But a lot of that work, obviously, must be applicable to Windows 2000 as well. I don't know whether that's a month of work or not. I don't know if it's a month and a half or 2 months worth of work. So if I look at our schedule and I say, if it's a month and a half of work, I know very clearly how to get to August in an RTM perspective. If it's more than a month and a half of work, I'm not sure, quite honestly. So that's, you know, so when I look at our schedule, yeah, you've heard us say, you know, we won't ship it until it's time, and that's a reliability statement, that's a security statement. We've shipped a bunch of products before. Our track record is decidedly mediocre on schedule, though we've done it a few times, so we sort of have a sense. I felt that summer was very, very, very achievable. But I don't have I'm not clear on what our exit strategy is from the security stuff. This is sort of roll up your sleeves, get into it, and then look at the schedule from there. So I know that that's a hard answer for you because you're betting your business. This is me telling you our engineering schedules. This is not something to be communicated publicly. You all are close partners. Our engineering schedule has us coming in the end of the summer, but I'm not gonna stand here and tell you I know how to get there until we get through the security stuff. So that's where we are on the schedule. You should continue to push us and ask us about it. But as you will make business bets on our trajectory. Really, the thing that we will communicate out to you as a partner, not something that I want going broadly in the marketplace, is really when we've exited the security work. If we exited a month and a half from now, feel good. If we haven't exited a month and a half from now, feel good that we're doing the things you need us to do, but don't feel good about an August start yet. Okay, so that's how I think about the schedule. And please, that's something that I'm communicating to you all as partners, not as something that I want leaked into the marketplace. Okay, so this is a fun one. Competition. So every single day, we have to earn your business. We have to earn your business as a technology partner and supplier. So that means this is a good, lively marketplace that we participate in. Right? We're not the only game in town. And so I am sure that each one of you I've had lots of conversations about, hey, I know you guys are a little more scalable. I know you've got all these additional things. But Linux, man, it might be good enough. Here's how we think about Linux. They compete on the basis of very good imitation versus innovation. So make no bones about it. They are a phenomenal Linux, and it's sort of this amorphous blob, because hardcore, there are a bunch of people participating on Linux that we need to bring back to our platform. So I am using this they, and I've personally been to 5 Linux user groups in the last 8 months. So I'm living and breathing this community as well. But it is an IP vacuum cleaner. Very efficient one, but it's an IP vacuum cleaner. And they compete on the basis of good imitation versus the innovation. On the basis of the fact that it is good enough, and on the basis of a very strong community. The question when you think about us as a partner, or anyone else, any other software provider that's really predicated on a business model of intellectual property, is the world done with innovation that spans, right? Our strategy has really got to be predicated on breakout innovation. It's not just, yes, we are higher performance today with IIS and Windows. But that's just this treadmill that, you expect me to keep doing that, and we will keep doing that. But you think of us as a partner when we're able to do the breakout innovation. I think the breakout innovation that we're doing this year is around this app platform. And that's a statement of a community. It's a statement of our R&D investments and the tools that we can bring to bear, whether it be server, whether it be Visual Studio. There was a wonderful mail thread, a posting done by the CEO of Zimian. This guy, Miguel, as some of you may know, was sort of, I would characterize as somebody the godfather of GNOME. And he has been quite public in his endorsement and support of CLR and some of the work that's happened in C#. And so it created this huge controversy. And he's a very, very smart guy. And he came back and was saying, look, I'm evaluating it for technology's sake, and this isn't about religion. This is about picking the best technology that enables us to do our business. You bet on us if you think we can deliver breakout innovation. That's a statement of process. That's a statement of business model. That's a statement of ecosystem. So that is strategy number one. Strategy number two has got to be on best economics. Okay? We are in the intellectual property business. Many of you are in the intellectual property business. We need to make sure that we provide a business model that enables you to differentiate and be successful, and enables us to differentiate and be successful. I did an interview with Barron's. This was about 2 years ago now. It really came down to a Red Hat valuation discussion, and I argued that Red Hat, which at the time was sort of a controversial statement, that Red Hat becomes a services company, right, on a services margin, and that there was the valuation was way overvalued relative to the margin that they could maintain. We have got to create a model. We have to continue to create a model where you and Microsoft and the community that we espouse to enables economics. The GPL. So the statement I'm making here is really around the GPL, which is what enables Linux to be a very aggressive IP vacuum cleaner. The economic pressures rise. It's very hard to maintain the GPL and the innovation. I think the model that IBM is doing today is actually quite clever, where they use a Red Hat distribution, and then they charge for a set of middleware on top. But that's ancillary to their core business, which is great services, some of which, there's some IBM people today, we love the services that you do on Windows. The X-Scale servers, which are fantastic on Windows, but it's ancillary to their core business model, right? Economics matter here. Economics for you, economics for us, to incent and drive us. Our core business is delivering platforms and building blocks. That's a motivation. Yes, I wake up in the morning on an economic basis, not just work for work's sake. The last piece is something that I think is a challenge for us, and I think it is something that we, frankly, must learn. I think Linux has a very interesting development and community model. And there's a set of things that you're starting to see us do, things like shared source, things like a more aggressive community participation model. We need to do a better job on this. I feel very confident in our trajectory around the first two. The second one, there's lots of internal discussions about how we do better community participation. We were in a discussion a couple days ago, and actually, what happens if we took the whole development team and they were up on news groups for a day? We call it Community Fridays. Probably not the right term, but this is an area where I think you are critical to us. You are the community. You are the epicenter of that community. So pushing us to have a good dialogue and a community model where it isn't just, flying to Redmond. Welcome to the age of the Internet. You should be able to have this dialogue with us, not simply by getting on a plane and coming to Redmond. I was talking to some gentlemen from South Africa earlier this morning. This is an amazing story, where they had inadvertently booked, their travel agent had booked them to Redmond in the Northwest. The only problem was it was Redmond in Oregon. So last night they came into Redmond, Oregon, rented a car, and drove up here, which is pretty amazing. And my hat is off to them. But we need to do a model so they don't have to fly to Redmond, Oregon, rent a car, and drive to Redmond, Washington. So flexible participation is core to our strategy. Okay, IBM. There are parts of IBM that are a close partnership with us. We love the work that they do, that IGS does in the Windows platform. We love the work that they do relative to Windows servers. But at the end of the day, they are also a core competitor for us, and in an opportunistic fashion, right? Operating systems is not their core asset or business. So, hey, great strategy to ride the Linux wave. That's our battle to win or lose. So we need to win against Linux. We need to constantly demonstrate volume and value relative to the mainframe side of the business, right? And frankly, relative to WebSphere. So the application server, some of you watching this, the WebLogic and WebSphere competitive battle in a very adolescent market. It's about where you could say, hey, it's OS agnostic and you don't need any deep integration into the operating system. Watch how that functionality and that platform is broadening. Don't be confused. We're a platform. WebLogic is a platform. WebSphere is a platform. And that is a very hard competitive battle for the hearts and minds of the line of business application developer. And so that means winning developers to .NET. On the Sun side, what are we seeing out of them? They are focusing, I don't know if focus on scale-up is the right statement, because their mix has trended down dramatically into the 4 and actually 2, 4, and 8 proc. That means a lot of margin pressure. It means they're losing money. The halo around Java and J2E is fading fast, and they're retrenching into their key verticals. From our perspective, it's just keep executing. Don't take the eye off the ball on reliability, on scale out, on PC economics, because they are the last of the vertically integrated mini computer companies, really. And so we just need to drive the PC economics and the value proposition that offers, win developers to .NET, and then make sure that there's a reasonable migration story. One of the things that you'll hear in these sessions, and you should challenge us on, is making sure that as people are moving off of Spark or moving off of proprietary Unix, that the migration from Unix to Windows is smooth, because that will be a major push for us. This slide is, and I did tune a little bit for the audience, and then I was told early this morning that there are a bunch of OEM partners in the audience, so that was an omission tune for the audience, not for in general. I wanted you to make sure you understood that you're vital to us. You are the community. My job, our engineer's job, is to create a set of building blocks. Those building blocks are nothing without the solutions that you deliver. And that means that you demand a set of building blocks that work for your respective businesses. It means an opportunity to engage us in a meaningful dialogue. It means an opportunity to differentiate, for you to differentiate. And so that means here's a set of building blocks. You take them, your unique vision, and you drive them into the marketplace. This slide, I wanted to give you a sense of some of the field initiatives that we're doing. And we can decide whether, as you do your surveys, if a couple of you, I will go through them. A couple of you just give me some verbatims and whether this is interesting to you. But sometimes I get questions when I do talks like this, and hey, I like your technology. I sort of get what you're doing in marketing. Tell me how you're thinking about the field and the field focus. Field is in our Salesforce focus. So I wanted to give you a flavor of that. The Uber campaign is agility. And we go in and we talk to people and we say, look, we need to wring operational costs out of you, your business. We need to help you. We want to go in and say, here's how you save 10 or 15%. And on the basis of those 10 or 15% savings, if you wanted to invest in greater business value, here's how you do it. Lower TCO in the infrastructure. We have a sort of focus around server right sizing. You may have heard this articulated in the marketplace, some of it around server consolidation. But the context of being very specific around how, as you move to Windows.NET Server or Windows 2000, what's the right number of servers to manage your directory or for Exchange servers. So right sizing and doing some consolidation. Secure connectivity and infrastructure. Companies are saying, yeah, I understand your engineering processes, but look, I need an end-to-end strategy and solution from Microsoft in terms of how to secure my operation and my infrastructure. That's what that is. I'm at the bottom. And then management, which is deployment. It's how does the server, SMS, and MOM relate into driving a solution that is credible from an operations perspective and from a software distribution perspective. At the top, moving up here, this is the next 24 months are, in my opinion, application server platform. We've always dreamed that the world would move to a Wintel model. I haven't found a Sun account yet that I can't walk into and talk about, is Spark really your long-term strategy? Is that, are you comfortable with that price premium? But I think the key battleground for us, frankly, will be in the application server and the application server platform. And there's 3 parts of it. Customers got to believe in the vision. They got to believe in the tool of Visual Studio, and they got to believe in the server. And that is a huge, and that means This is a developer statement. This is an enterprise statement. This is a breadth ISV statement. Unix migration has got to be part of that. People say, oh boy, I'm really excited about this, but I've got all this investment in Unix applications. Articulate to me how that migration happens, because it can't be just clean break. I have years and years of investment built up there. Enterprise application integration, EAI, some of you may have heard of that, but this says, how do I integrate and provide an end-to-end application experience that gives me a better view of my business? And then we've already talked at length about collaboration infrastructure. The only other piece of this that, if you have a chance, think about, and I don't think we have it on the agenda, but you'll see how we're using Windows Server and STS, but also look at separate from Windows.NET Server. But think about the trajectory of SharePoint Portal Server, or SPS, as well. All right. So what's the bottom line? And then I'll do a couple questions, and then we'll turn it over to a man with a much better tie than me, Tom Bittman. Our business is going strong. It was very, I know the economic situation is tough for you. It's tough for us. It is an opportunity for us. Then I look at it, I say, are customers willing to spend money on us, keep those projects going, and how does our volume look? In this down market, we are taking share, and we are growing volume. We are crossing the 50% mark from a server shipment perspective, and we're gaining ground in a unit and a revenue basis. We have a good vision in terms of where we need to go. And as a company, because we just finished our mid-year reviews where we go through sort of look at all the different businesses of Microsoft, the server is a core investment area for us. So the R&D investment that we'll make this year, which is huge, 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 will continue to accelerate or increase next year, because you're betting on us and our ability to pump R&D into those building blocks to enable you. So I hope as you go through this day and this agenda and engage with us in a dialogue, there is no better partner for helping you win, for you differentiating in the marketplace. And I appreciate your help and your support, and I look forward to working with you. Keep us in a dialogue. If you're happy, tell us. If you're not happy, tell us. But we can't be this opaque partner in Redmond. We need to be a partner with you, building and growing your business as we build and grow ours.